Hey, everybody. That was pretty bad. I mean, like, pretty bad in some sense, kind of fun in another because the Rockets are actually a super fun watch. Unfortunately, on a night where the Raptors are working Emmanuel quickly and Jakob Poeltl back into the fold, it seems like on paper they would have some matchup versatility, some ability to hang with guys like Şengün, the FEV and Şengün pick and roll, all of the explosiveness and dynamism outside of it from guys like Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore. But as it turned out, there was one guy in the Raptors who had the juice in this game, and that was Scotty Barnes, who scored a lot of his points out of live dribble drives and like empty side post ups and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the Raptors lose by 29 points, 135 to 106. My dear friend Manny is here to talk about it with me. Manny, thoughts on the game? What's the pitch, the elevator pitch?
So here's the thing. If we're talking elevator pitch, there's always a ground level, right? There's always a ground level. Sometimes there's a basement level for the parking, right? So the Raptors may be like 10 floors below that right
Sure.
now. But here's the positive side, right? Here's the silver lining. The elevator goes up.
Yeah.
And the Raptors will eventually go up too. This is part of the growing pains, folks. It's gonna happen. We knew this was coming eventually. It just happened so suddenly. I don't think anyone expected it to happen so suddenly, but here we are.
Let's say that when it comes to the Raptors and this analogy, let's say, or metaphor, I don't know which one it is right now. Maybe too much basketball. I'm losing my I don't know what literary devices are anymore. But
We'll go with
regardless,
metaphor. We'll go
yes,
with metaphor.
exactly. So the Raptors are suddenly they're trying to build a penthouse in a building, let's say, that didn't have one before, but they're putting in a new parking garage for the penthouse residency
Oh
before
yeah.
they do it. So there's a lower floor now in the hopes of, drawing in that, let's say, tenant. Lewis says analogy. Thank you, Lewis. This is why you're the editor of Raptors
Oh, it's
Republic, and I'm
Lewis.
just
Yeah.
a schmuck.
Listen to
But
Lewis.
yeah, exactly. So we have VCR says felt like Scotty was empty, scoring no effort. Let's talk about Scotty scoring because I don't think it was that. I think like Gary had a hot start to the game. I don't like Scotty scored a bunch of points early on in the game as
hmm
far as competing in, let's say, a competitive game. It's not necessarily his fault that the
hmm
team didn't play very well, but you lose by 29, all types of competition, all types of performances are going to seem empty. But as far as like what
hmm
Scotty was able to do tonight on against a defense that succeeded against almost literally everybody else, were you impressed by his ability to create for himself and his own shot?
Yeah, absolutely. In a game where we saw such little energy from the team overall, Scotty is somebody you can count on, I think, to always bring that intensity. He's the leader of this team now, and he's doing he showed why in this game. Unfortunately, it wasn't the result that the team wanted, but I don't think you can pin that on Scotty for a second. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a team that honestly I don't even it's such a shell of what it used to be almost, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like you can't pin this one on Scotty at all. He was driving, he was slashing, he was shooting the ball. He had 28 points. Like he was the focal point of any defensive schemes that Houston was trying to come up and put on the Raptors. So I don't think you can blame Scotty for this one.
Yeah, and I think like considering the dialogue around Scotty, maybe in a handful of his games because he does start later or kind of ramp up later in games, people are saying like, "Give me that for 4 quarters, like give me that earlier. Let's see some of that urgency early on." And I think early on he did bring that, and this is something that in other games he's maybe struggled or not been able to implement himself for, I guess the ability to like get into the lane with a live dribble, do it quite often, but in this game, he started early and did it early. And I made this point about, Pascal, I'd maybe like a month ago or something like that. But, expectations of a player to kind of drag a team to a certain place maybe are a little bit like misguided sometimes because as the talent level of the league improves, the depth of rosters, the talent across it, and like of your fourth best starter and your seventh best rotation player become more and more important. And we see that with a team like Houston, who their starters, they win a lot of minutes, but they're able to get like these types of performances off their bench. And we see, Pascal wasn't able to lead the Raptors to this vaunted land where people wanted it, but like LeBron and AD missed the playoffs with the Lakers. And that's like LeBron and AD. Luka missed with the Mavs. It's hard to carry a team. So my expectation isn't that Scottie will carry a team or anything like that. My expectation is that Scottie meaningfully grows his game and tries to develop this year as things are not going very well. And we have a follow-up from VCR says only 18 assists this game, felt everyone was sluggish and not playing Darko ball. I think that's a reflection of what the Rockets are good at, which is like ball pressure and funneling. And to kind of simplify how they attacked offensively, at least with Scottie, that meant that they went to a lot more of those post-ups. I had a tweet before the game that was like, I'm waiting for the pick and roll switch, the empty side post-up with Scottie on Fred. The first time they guarded each other, and I said it's going to be a dunk or a foul, that's what happened. It was a pick and roll switch with Dennis, post entry to Scottie, empty side. He got fouled. He went to the line. And so Scottie was efficient in getting his own offense, but I think the Rockets just did a really fantastic job of funneling the Raptors repeatedly where they meant to go. And this is something that the Raptors against good defenses struggle against is who's going to get downhill and turn the defense, because Darko ball or 0.5 basketball and all that kind of stuff, it is meant to build over the course of a possession. But if the Raptors can't get below the break, you're not really building on anything. You're just kind of like moving the ball back and forth. And we've seen that with Nick's, I guess, offense too. What was your impression of the overall implementation of, let's say, what the Raptors are trying to do on the year offensively in this game?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately they're still learning this team. I think the focal point is always going to be Scottie. And I think it's about providing him with pieces like, shoot, that can slash. But I think, to be honest, what sticks out to me is someone that's missing is somebody that's vocal. I don't know that there's a vocal leader of this team anymore. And I don't know that there was even when OG and Pascal were on the team. Obviously, OG didn't talk much. Pascal, maybe he did. But
everyone, like the testimonials from the players seem to indicate that. And Pascal himself is like, I lead by example. Everyone says like he's the first in the gym. He works like his tail off all the time. But as far as like getting on a guy and being like, yo, like pull your weight, like he would never really do something like that.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. But I mean, in terms of actually communicating and being vocal on the court, I just didn't see much of that either. I feel like the communication is not there. There were a few defensive lapses there too. There was one that I was thinking of particularly when I think Jalen Green got an easy layup, and it was just like it made you think.
Oh, was it
that there wasn't too much communication at all?
Was it a Şengün post up on Scottie? Thad helps from the top, and then there's a back cut into the middle of the paint, and Bruce Brown didn't tag.
I think it might have been that
Cam,
one
actually. But yeah, like breakdowns.
Yeah, but it was something that was pretty, I think, easy to find. But yeah, it ultimately, I think that's what's missing is that vocal leader. But at the same time, I mean, the effort just wasn't there tonight. I think ultimately we all knew that. They came out the gates and they weren't really, I think their legs weren't with them tonight at all. It seemed like, the team was just tired. It seemed like nothing was really, I guess, coming to fruition on the offensive end, and the shooting was down. Nobody was really doing well in transition, although we talk about the transition potential between Scottie, IQ, RJ, who wasn't playing tonight. There's a lot of development that the Raps need for sure.
Yeah, there's a few comments that are bringing up the defense, and just to highlight it, like I think that the Raptors started out in a really bad spot in this game defensively because they had to contend with a lot of point of attack creation, obviously, and that's something that a lot of teams provide, but the Rockets are quite good at it. And Emmanuel quickly coming in and being like just coming back from an injury, being on a minutes restriction reportedly. That's something that is obviously going to see a little bit less resistance. And then Jakob Poeltl, who's also coming back from a long injury and being on a minutes restriction, having to go up against like everyone is surprised by how quickly that, Şengün can kind of like gyrate his way through the lane, but his body control and his quickness is nuts.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Isn't
and
it?
if you're not an elite athlete standing across from him to kind of like
Yeah.
mirror his movements and to
Yeah.
like stay locked in and his touch around the rim, Jakob, it's not a surprise that the very first time he lined up against Şengün, you got a post entry. He shook him out of his shoes and went right to the front of the rim. And so
Yeah.
the Raptors didn't have a single coverage matchup for Şengün, and then they didn't have the double because Şengün is going to eviscerate you if you double. And obviously, the outcome of that is that in the half court, the Raptors 91.3 points per play, not great, and
Mhm.
the Rockets 121,
That's ridiculous.
fantastic.
Wow.
And the
Yeah.
Rockets don't need transition possessions. They got some in this game, but they don't need them for their offense. And the Raptors, their frequency, after being the team that plays in transition so often, in this game, only 13% of their possessions, 32nd percentile. I can't remember which assistant coach it was, but the Rockets at halftime, he was like, really, really happy to see that we were able to keep them out of transition. That's so important for them. So the Rockets had stuff they wanted to accomplish in this game. They checkmarked all of it by the 6-minute mark of the second quarter, and then they started adding things like have Cam Whitmore score his career high, play him
Yeah.
on Thompson a bunch of minutes, have Jalen Green pop off a little bit, and then that's what it was. They got shellacked, man.
That young core of like Whitmore, Thompson, Green, like that's terrifying.
Yeah,
You know,
just
in a
on the
couple
wing.
years,
They also
like
and also like I don't want to talk too much about the Rockets, but like Şengün, obviously, who we wax poetic
obviously.
about, but also
Mhm.
Jabari Smith. They run this pick and roll for Fred. He gets middle. Jabari is almost like 7 feet tall. He's cutting baseline synonymously with Fred. Comes out. They set a pin down for him. This is like a lithe big who comes around or not a pin down, the pin in and like shapes to the ball, catches in movement and cans a triple. You're like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like I know I saw him at Summer League, this summer, and he looked
Mhm.
awesome. But to see him do it in game with movement against contest, I'm like, at that height,
Yeah.
Lauri Markkanen is kind of, and maybe like Cat are the only guys who are really doing that at that size. So the Rockets are set up to do like
Now,
really fun things.
100%. And granted, though, the Raptors, the effort wasn't there tonight. It just
Wait,
seemed like
I
the
have, I
energy
have a, I
levels.
have a stat. I'm gonna.
Oh yeah.
The Rockets shot 86% the rim. Okay, go.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay. What's the league average for that?
Oh, league average, I imagine would be like in the low 60s.
Wow. Okay. Well,
86% is a lot.
yeah, that's the narrative of the game, and points in the paint too. I remember the third quarter was like I think about 8:30 left in the third quarter, and Houston had 52 points in the paint compared to the Raptors 56 total. So I mean, if that doesn't tell you a story, I don't know what does. The defense, there's no defense if Pirtle's out. That's the thing. There's no perimeter defense. There was no perimeter defense in this game. There was no there was no big in the middle to stop anybody from slashing. I think this is like, the defensive pressure just isn't there. But then if the perimeter pressure isn't there either, then I mean, it's essentially just a bunch of bodies going out there and just kind of looking for each other, looking at each other for what to do next. It didn't feel like, the game was too, I guess, intentional in any way.
Yeah. You're bang on that. Like, if you don't have ball pressure and you don't have elite backside like rotation or rim protection, you are mostly just having guys kind of like respond to what the offense wants to do.
Yeah.
And the offense gets to like move through their actions without much stress.
Yeah.
And then, that's kind of like a tough position to be in defensively. And that's how you let, the Rockets get to the rim on 40% of their possessions, twice as much as the Raptors did, and score 86% there. I mean, it's absurd. I see some critiques of Darko, some defensive Darko in the chat. I don't think a coach makes or breaks a defense to this degree. I'm sure there's probably a coach out there who could get more out of this group defensively, but I think that the Raptors are in a very tough spot from their talent, point of view to guard. I would love the Raptors to be performing better right now, but I don't think Darko can just be like a coach who like flips the switch. I think like players do most of the work on the court. is what I would say. We have some people bringing up the incredible interaction that I want to get
Dennis
your
and Fred. Yeah.
Fred, Dennis,
Yeah.
and here's the thing: Scotty was in there too.
Yeah, it was.
Let's walk through it. So Fred and Scotty, this is much of the conversation, is that like contentious stuff, tension about who has the ball, roles, roles and all that kind of stuff. Right. Everybody's like, grr, and including those guys. People break apart. Dennis comes early this season. Everybody's like, why is Dennis doing what Fred did? Why does Dennis get so much of the ball? Grr. So all these guys who there's been this conversation like, why do these guys want so much of the ball? Those three guys converge on the basketball, and life imitates art, and they fight over it. Incredible. Incredible, man. That's
mind-blowing. That's like it's like a movie, you know what I mean? Exactly. It's cinematic.
It's like Waiting for Godot. Like it's just tragic comedy. It's like I wish like Ave Maria was playing in the background when that was happening. It felt like incredible. And also, I'm gonna curse right away for anybody who doesn't like that. Before the game started, we get the Scotty and Fred dap up, and they just happened, and the camera was in the right spot, that you get the same dap up position as the Larry Bird and Michael Jordan thing, where he's like, fuck you bitch. And then like they literally had the same thing. I couldn't believe how much stuff aligned in this game. It was so funny.
I have an inquiry that I want to make, and I think I know, because after that interaction, after that happened with that little scuffle around the ball and nobody wanted to give it up, there was another one where Fred just ran through Schroeder, and I don't know if you saw that one, but like they started talking.
Oh yeah.
Right? Did you see that one?
Yeah, he blew him up. Yeah.
So I think I know what happened. I think I know what Schroeder was asking Fred. I think he was asking for his financial advisor's number, because obviously a couple of years ago, Schroeder was like, he had that contract with the Lakers, turned it down. And then now he's talking to Fred because Fred just got the biggest bag in free agency last summer. I just wanted to point that out. I think that's what it was about.
That would be, if I were a player and my agent didn't get me as much money as I thought I should be getting, I'd be really upset. And I think that happened with OG. And I think, I don't know what Dennis's role was in like turning that contract down or anything like that. I don't want to count pockets too much, but yeah, he missed out on some money, it seems. And Fred, checking my watch over time, checking the data logs, I don't know if he's ever missed out on, let's say, the bag. He outperformed a couple contracts, but he's done a really fantastic job of being a guy who, you know, finds a way to like the bag. Anything else stand out from like the on-court perspective in this game for you?
No, I think it's pretty simple, to be honest, man. I think it's just a lack of energy today. I think the team is going to go through these growing pains no matter what. I think it just happened so suddenly for the squad. Yeah. We didn't expect it, and we didn't know what pieces we were getting. And to be honest, I don't think many people were familiar with Jordan Nwora's game before this and before Chicago. Clearly, he has something in his bag that maybe Darko will let him unleash at some time later on. But I think for now, get comfortable, people. This is what to expect for the next few games, at least for the rest of the season. And who knows, there might be even more people being more and more Raptors being sold off at the deadline.
Yeah. This is something I wrote about yesterday, and it's not a paywalled article if anyone wants to go to raptorsrepublic.com and read it, but Jordan Nwora and Grady Dick, who Nwora, he shot 60% from the field in this game in a little bit of time. Grady was 1 for 8, but had 4 steals, drew a charge, had 6 boards. And like, it gets boring to say this because I think of Grady as a guy who reads the floor tremendously well, who has a fantastic feel for the game, but also everybody and their mom is just waiting, like, hit the shot. And that's really what we're waiting for. He does so many other things really well and at a level better than what was expected for him and most, you know, guys who just turned 20. But you're waiting on those guys to hit shots. Grady, they just invested a lottery pick into. Nwora seems like he provides a decent facsimile of what Gary does. And Gary is a guy who is, like, you know, He's expiring. And so a role on the Raptors, which is kind of like the Gary Trent Jr. gunner role, that the Raptors never had anyone who could come close to providing that. So Gary had a weird type of security for a player who wasn't seen as like that good in the NBA. He was absolutely essential to everything that the Raptors did. And we might see it that the Raptors end up having that change at the end of the season. And it really, like, we see Grady in this game. He plays almost 24 minutes. He played 30 last game. He played 20 minutes and put like one shot up and missed it the other game. Like, Wara is creeping up there too. We might see a changing of the guard, which is interesting. Do you have any thoughts about like the gunner role for the Raptors going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna integrate Nwora into that role, and if you're gonna allocate some of those minutes to Grady as well, I say just do it, because those are the guys that you're, at least Grady for sure. We don't know much about Nwora and his future with the Raptors, but
Sure.
obviously with Grady, I mean, give him as many minutes as you can, because like you said, we invested a lottery pick in him. It only makes sense to, as you're losing and losing pretty badly, to give a guy like Grady, who's still trying to figure out the game but is so smart, give him as many minutes as he can as he transitions to the pros. I mean, there's nothing to lose at this point and everything to gain. So I would say in terms of that gunner role, I would split it up between the two, but I would still give more minutes to Grady Dick.
Yeah. There was also, when I wrote the piece, just to borrow from a comment, Robin was the commenter, I believe. I don't think they listened to the podcast, but they were the commenter. And they were saying, like, this is reminiscent of, let's say, the Norm to Gary trade, in that there's expectations about what it could mean in the future, but it's definitely a downgrade at the time. When it comes to Gary versus Norm, Gary didn't actually really grow his game meaningfully and surpass Norm over the time of the contract, which was the expectation. And so the Raptors just kind of, over time, traded the better player for the worst player. And the hope is that, you know, in the combination of Wara, who can act as a stopgap while Grady does develop and gets ready for maybe big minutes, you also get like Wara for much less money, let's say, than Gary probably. And it also means that Grady can like more naturally grow into minutes. But then again, Gary is a very reliable 3-point shooter. He's shooting like well over 40% this season. He's been shooting over 50% on his threes since January 1st, since the OG trade. He's been shooting, I think, 53% on catch and shoot threes. His route to being a guy who gets a decent sized contract that he obviously wants, and you know, the reporting was that he was trying to get like a 25 million per year contract in the middle of last season, when the indication was that he wasn't going to accept his player option, which he obviously ended up doing. The only way he gets back around to like 20 million is if he just shoots the hell out of the ball. And he's done that recently. It'll be a really interesting like shooting guard situation to observe the rest of the season. Manny, are you ready for the ad read? I hope the listeners are ready for the ad read.
You're building it up, so I'm as ready as I can be.
Ladies and gentlemen, I see some people in chat asking, what are the Raptors going to do? Who's going to be on the team after the trade deadline? If you want speculation, February 6th, downtown Toronto, Rivoli. The doors open at 6. The panels start at like 7:30 around there. Last year we did this. We sold it out. It's basically a live podcast. The guests are William Liu, Blake Murphy, Iman Adon, Lindsey Dunn, Brandon Leftwich, myself, Lewis, Andrew Damlin, Trevon Heath, and Esfandiar Barahini. We're going to be talking basketball, some of the organizational stuff, some of the on-court stuff, and of course, trade speculation. It was a blast last year. It's $15 to come. Comes with a drink. As I said, we sold it out last year. Go get your tickets, because it might be sold out. We had a couple people last year who couldn't come. So that's what I'm saying. Lewis is in chat saying slop. And that's what we're giving to you February 6th. I hope everyone comes out and enjoys it. I had a ton of fun last year.
Check it out, people. Check it out.
How do you feel about that, Manny? Good ad read, right?
I feel like it was flawless execution. Nice. As always with you, Samson.
Certainly, yes, surely. We'll do a little bit of slop right now, though, because there wasn't that much to talk about. Actually, here's what I want to talk about.
All right.
Before we get to Mad Hog says, "Where's those guys who are wrong about everything? Aiden and Oren." Hey, listen, man. So
That's terrible.
this Aiden and Oren
That's
went to do other things. I really
Mhm.
like Aiden and Oren for what it's worth. I'll not let you,
I
I
do
will not
too.
let you do this. Yes.
Great guys.
And people loved the show, like the wrap up. But since they went to do other things, the wrap up, I just started doing the podcast live on YouTube so that everyone can yell at me in the chat. And they like Oren is doing like more so Canada basketball stuff. And Aiden, as evidenced by his mustache and like beanie, is a longshoreman out on the West Coast or something, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's somewhere near a lighthouse, okay?
And God bless both of them. I don't know if they're wrong. I didn't really pay attention to their ticks, but I don't think they're wrong about stuff that often. But I will say this: Oren is a fantastic writer, and Aiden is a like truly tremendous writer. When Aiden writes something, I always read it because he's so witty, he's
He
so
is
funny, he has
very
such
clever.
incredible pace and like
Mhm.
levity to his writing that an Aiden Moss piece for me is like I will sit and read every single one. It
Mhm.
provides value outside of like analyzing basketball. He's the best. So yes,
Absolutely.
all the love to Aiden and Oren. Okay, what I wanted to talk about, since I waxed poetic about my two pals, the Rockets broadcast was waxing poetic about Scotty, going on and on about like how this guy is fantastic. The Raptors are building around him. They talked about him like the Raptors broadcast in 2018-19 talked
Yeah.
about Giannis Antetokounmpo. They were like Trump out there screaming "Build the wall, man!" Or like who's the coach Van Gundy, right? Like Stan,
Yeah.
like form a fucking wall. Like they were like on the broadcast, they're like, "No, this guy, he's a wrecking ball. You gotta get in front, build a wall." Like they were freaking out. I always try to watch the opposing team's broadcast for away games because I won't be at the game, right? And
Mhm.
just to see kind of get a census of or a consensus of sorts of what the Raptors are trying or what other teams think of the Raptors, and they loved Scotty.
Mhm.
How many like opposing broadcasts have you caught this season? And if you have, what did they think of the Raptors players? And I guess most importantly, Scotty.
Yeah, so full transparency, I haven't caught many of
Sure.
the away games in their broadcasts, but I will say that it does fall in line, I think, with what we're used to hearing when it comes to the Raptors, Matt Devlin, Alvin Williams or Jack Armstrong. Whenever they're talking about a Raptors opponent, and maybe the Raptors are up by like 20 or something, they may be talking about the opposing players or the opposing team's star player. Like, this is the guy that's going to carry the league for the next like 5-10 years. I feel like they do that more often than not. So I feel like maybe that's just good manners, good politics,
It's
maybe.
polite.
I don't know, maybe, but I think that happens way more often than not because when the winning broadcast team is up by so much, I mean, what else can you do? Like, what else can you talk about, right? I mean, Jack Armstrong, we know, can talk about anything and you can go on
Sure.
forever. But I feel like with Matt Devlin, I feel like, before with Leo Armstrong too, you would hear them talk about the opposing players and how bright their futures are all the time. So I don't think that Scotty's case is any less special because of that. I think Scotty, obviously, watching him so closely and how he's developed over the last 3 years to possibly even being an all-star injury replacement this year. I mean, he's definitely somebody that's going to be in the discussion for top 10 players probably in the next 2-3 years. That's just my guess. I could be wrong, like Aiden and Oren. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, but I do believe in Scotty's potential. I do believe in his skill. Like, I think that he is the guy. And coming back to my point, I will say, I feel like that happens more often than not with the Raptors when they're bringing up an opposing player's potential for sure. So I mean, it maybe isn't as common as other people think, but I think it's pretty much of a regular occurrence.
Okay. Well, regardless, when I tweet out the quotes, people like them. Here's a really, really good question, I think, from Sean R. Says, do you like RJ's future better as a big shooting guard or a small forward? And I'll say I think he has much more utility on offense as a big shooting guard. We
Hmm.
saw some of those like mismatches he was able to take with Steph Curry and Malik Monk on those pinch post actions. They just throw it into him. I think he's done a really good job of punishing smaller players. Now, the question is, can RJ give you enough like value to maybe give you a little bit less shooting and a little bit less, I don't know, playmaking than like a regular combo or two guard? I'm not sure, but I think a lot of that probably comes on the defensive end. If he can really, because he hasn't been very good defensively, I haven't found since coming to the Raptors, but the whole team hasn't been very good. It's tough to judge in that context. On top of that, though, I think that being a big shooting guard might suit him well for like an off the bench role on a really good team. But if he can play really high level defense, I think there's room for him in a really good starting lineup, especially given his rim pressure, and I expect him to be like a passable 3-point shooter over time. So, and I've been impressed with a lot of his playmaking chops. And I know they weren't popping up as frequently in New York, but that's kind of my read of the situation. I think it's more advantageous for him offensively, certainly to be a big shooting guard, but hanging with smaller guards on the perimeter, being run
Hmm.
through a lot of screening actions, that kind of stuff. It might be a little bit tough, but what are your thoughts, Manny?
I would say big shooting guard too. I think with small forwards, you have to consider strength a little bit more when they're going to post up as well. Back to the basket. I think that's something that's obviously becoming more and more of a common occurrence as well. So big shooting guard for RJ makes the most sense for me.
Okay, here's a good one from Aubrey. Oh, sorry, Aubrey Los Ojos says Gen Z hoops is all about vibes. Bring back millennial grit. What do you think about that? You're
The
a
first thing I
millennial,
did,
right?
yeah, yeah, we're both millennials, no?
I think I'm like the youngest millennial, or I'm on the line because it shifted. I think it was like 1997, and then they're like 1996. I saw some there
Hmm.
like the divide is 1995.
That's
I'm
yeah, that
not,
does, yeah.
yeah, I'm not 21 for anybody wondering about that. Okay, I'm not 21. But yeah, what do you think about millennial grit versus Gen Z vibes?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's funny because when I think about grit and I think about millennial grit particularly, you obviously go back to the Memphis Grizzlies with Zebo, Gasol, Conley, Tony, Tony Allen. But I think even before that, you maybe go to like I guess like the kings of the 2000s, right? With the C Web, Jason Williams, Vladi Divac, sorry. I mean I think it's interesting, but I mean I don't know if that millennial grit will work with today's pace of play.
Hmm.
I think it's just too fast. What do you think?
I think there is a lot of really talented defenders in the NBA. I think that NBA like offense has just gotten like way too powerful. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that from like, oh, the rules are doing it. I think players are really good with the basketball. I
Mm-hmm.
just think like a lot of the reads that primary playmakers used to make are stuff that like the fourth option seamlessly does. Like it shouldn't, it should wow people a little bit that RJ Barrett has like a 6 assist game where he's making like those big swing left-handed skip passes a la 2011 LeBron James. Like LeBron was the biggest skip passer. He broke NBA defenses with the skip pass,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just something a lot of guys can do now. Like
Mm-hmm.
Scotty Barnes, of course, can skip pass, and he can, intentionally misguide and send off and delude the weak side zone and like ping it to somewhere else. Like that's an elevated version of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you this much. I think guys are just so talented. So I don't know about the generational divide. We have Mauricio Arenas who says, "Who cares about millennial? Focus on the game of basketball." Mauricio, I'll tell you this much: nobody focuses more on the game of basketball than me. I am too in the
That's
weeds
true.
on this stuff.
That's
Um,
true. That's
we also
true.
have OG3, who I need clarification from. Says Samson, you have a Hunter x Hunter tattoo and hitting JoJo poses. You're one of us. Please let me know if that's a Zoomer or millennial. Anyway, Nesta says the game really has evolved from generation to generation. It's incredible, man.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
th-
Absolutely.
there are players who I see them and
You
I
look and
couldn't have
you marvel at them.
imagined their game. And
Yeah.
the number one example I think is like Shea.
Yeah.
Shea, there
Mhm.
isn't a guard like Shea before Shea. I don't know how long it'll take for there to be a guard like him after. But I think when I saw Steph Curry in like the early 2010s, I was like, wow, this is kind of the guard position. And I was thinking of it in the future, and I was thinking like maybe Donovan Mitchell is what I was thinking about. Like a guy who could really run through a bunch of pick and roll reads, whose pull up three was everything, who had athletic pop. And I was like, that's the future of the guard
Yeah.
position. But then the best guard in the NBA right now is a guy who doesn't shoot that many threes, who is unbelievable when it comes to footwork, managing pace, being like a herky jerk octopus in the lane.
Mhm.
And that's what it is. And the three
Yeah.
best players in the NBA, or four even, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, Shea. Matt Hogg says they're getting twitchy. These guys don't shoot that many threes.
Yeah.
Like
No.
Steph broke the game as the star who shot the threes, and everyone's like, we got to shoot threes. We got to shoot threes. We got to shoot threes. And these guys are just like, the role players learned to shoot threes. So did the secondary stars. I'm going to eat like a gluttonous pig in the lane. And they just do. And I couldn't
Yeah.
have predicted that, truthfully.
100%. And I think also it goes to not only their eating in the lane, but I think it's also just their overall offensive output. Like you think about Jokic and, his points, but then also his assists. Like how much offense does he generate for the
Mhm.
Nuggets? Same thing with Embiid too, right? Like he's having an amazing season. Another one where he probably would have been the unanimous MVP. Unfortunately, obviously he's injured now, but
Yep.
same thing with him. Like went off for 70 points last week. Just absolutely insane. And I can see the same thing for guys like Domantas Sabonis and guys like Alperen Şengün as they continue to get better. I guess
Mhm.
Sabonis is kind of where he is now. He's not really the same level, I guess, of development that Şengün kind of is at right now. But man, like those guys, like, yeah, you're right. They don't shoot many threes, but they do shoot threes. But that's, I think, the evolution of the big man in itself is that, yeah, like before they didn't shoot many threes at all. Like you would never see a big man really hanging out on the perimeter. Now you're seeing big men all over the court, like anywhere. It could be like, top of the key. It could be like half court. It could be like back in the paint. It could be anywhere.
It's to the Embiid point. He scores 35 points a game.
Yeah.
And I think Scotty is a better, like worlds better as a passer than Embiid is. But Embiid is such an world-ending offensive force. They average the same amount of assists.
Mm-hmm.
Like Embiid, just you give him the ball and he can like stutter rip into the lane like he's Jimmy Butler. He can hit step backs. He makes over 50% of his mid-range jumpers step back, spin over both shoulders. You're like, and he's what, like 7'1", 7'2"? And he
Yeah.
moves like that. You're like, who the hell is this guy? And
Yeah.
then Shea does it in like this herky jerk way from above the break. He doesn't even necessarily need screen help. He gets past everybody's hips. And how do you contend? Like Steph isn't the far and away guy anymore. Neither is LeBron. Neither is KD. These guys just came in and they are
Mhm.
all so fantastically unique. And like it's crazy. Like Jokic and Embiid are two of the best centers we've ever seen, and there's
Yeah.
like zero similarities to their game, like none.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. There's
they have
nothing.
like basically no overlap.
Nothing at all. Like one is like just this dominant force that was being compared to Shaq a couple days ago, and
Yep.
even now so. And then the other one is like a guy that just wants to get home to race his horses. You know what I mean? But it's crazy because yeah, when you think about Jokic's game, it's like you look at him and it's like he looks kind of lazy out there on the court and almost like messy. Sorry, we're getting like so sidetracked here because it's not just Raps cast anymore. It's like NBA cast at this point. But so we're talking about like Jokic and how like he is on the court. It's like the guy, I don't even know, like how would you describe his game to like somebody who's never watched basketball before? Like he's
Mhm.
not so clean with his execution. Or he doesn't seem to be that way, but yet he is such an important part and like the pivotal part of what the Nuggets do.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing, man.
I think, Coco brings up something. She says, my favorite players are generally point guards, but I think that's because I'm short. It could be, and this also kind of helps in capture Steph's impact and popularity, is that like the way Steph plays, you can go emulate it. Like kids can more easily like pull up for three than they can do LeBron's, the big reach back tomahawk. And yeah, so we obviously enjoy things that we see ourselves in players, and that helps obviously identify. Aubrey Los Ojos says Jokic plays a lot like 91 Magic Johnson. Aubrey, I will say I've only seen like 3 full games of Magic on like the NBA history back when I had cable, but my family had cable. And OG3 says Jokic is like a bear covered oil that never loses his balance. It's like he really is. And the never loses his balance thing is incredible.
It's amazing.
We're gonna bring it back around to Scotty now. Something I tracked for Scotty was what percentage he shot on contested hook shots. And Sports Info Solutions, proprietary statistic company, I have a couple friends who work there. They also tracked it. And for the first like 55, 60 games of Scotty's rookie season, he shot 57% on contested hook shots. Incredible indicator of touch. And he was in the same like percentile as Jokic. His second season, he shoots 55% when I was tracking it. I didn't track Jokic's, but Jokic's has always been over 50%. These guys have like an uncanny ability, Scotty, Jokic, to always find the rim, no matter where their balance is, no matter like if they're taking contact, no matter if they're going up sideways, they can always locate the rim and just like plop it in there. And that's like tremendous stuff. And we also have a question from OG3. Says, speaking of the stutter rip, do you think that's something Scotty can add to his bag or use more? I will say the stutter rip is built off of quickness, and nothing about Scotty's game is quick except for his jump. I don't think he'd be a very strong stutter rip guy, because stutter rip is trying to like get away from the contact. Like you're trying to blow by somebody. And that's never been Scotty's strong suit. Scotty is just like tremendous at banging a dude under the rim, like putting him in the stanchion. We saw it, Reggie Bullock, he just backed him down, boom, slammed into him, dunk, the same way he did during that incredible fourth quarter comeback against the Spurs on Jeremy Sohan. Jimmy Butler can't put a guy in the rim like that, but he can be like a fantastic stutter rip guy. And I don't think Scotty can emulate the stutter rip necessarily with quickness, but he can use his strength to like absolutely destroy guys, maul dudes. Is kind of my takeaway.
Yeah.
Green Perspective says, who's Scotty banging again? Hey man, anybody who wants to work, I'll say that much. Aubrey says, yeah, he says he'll send me a clip of 91 Magic on Twitter. The similarity is kind of hilarious. Yeah, that would be awesome. On top of that, talking about PG, there was one after it was Amen Thompson who had 2 Euros on Grady that were insane. Because on a Euro you have to kind of go like sideways.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have to keep moving forward. Amen Thompson, I think, has the fastest Euro I've ever seen. He's so explosive. And he perfectly manipulated the gather, too, so that you get like that extra gather step so you can really move through the lane. He did it to Grady twice. He is like 100th percentile athlete. Watching him move, and Asar as well, those two guys, they're nuts. But on the one play, he drove right into Grady. Grady drew the charge, and we got a funny moment on the Rockets broadcast where they said, Dick is on the ground. Ime is loving it. And then the broadcast just went like silent for like 4 full seconds, because they're probably like, ooh, that's maybe a little tough. I'm not sure. Do you have any other thoughts? Just if this feels like it's a little bit, unstructured, I'm just letting you know. It always turns into responding to chat questions. So don't feel too bad about it. Anything interesting you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, to be honest, I think, look, if we're looking at the overall perspective of this team and kind of what's going on right now, I think it's just growing pains. I think this is something we haven't experienced since the Brian Colangelo days. And let's be honest, those were some dark days, people. But look, the good news is There is no longer the cloud of Colangelo over this Raptors team. I know that Mazai and Bobby have been a little bit questionable, I guess, at best in certain aspects, but I think that the direction the team is going in finally gives me some. It should finally give us some certainty because we know now that they're finally not retooling. They seem to be rebuilding now for sure. So let's get comfy. This is not going to be fun to watch, although maybe we'll see some flashes of potential future outcomes. And let's just enjoy it while we can and think back to, the times where the Raptors weren't so fun to watch, back when they had those weirder jerseys,
I think like an important thing because basically when teams don't perform that well, when they're tanking, and whether the Raptors are tanking, whatever they call it, in-house rebuilding, retooling, whatever adjective they throw at it, or adjective, anyway, whatever they throw at it, it doesn't really matter. The team isn't as good, and not as many people are going to watch. That happens with every single team. For the people who do stick around, because there was a huge influx of people post-championship and during the run-up to it, try and enjoy the opposing team. Like, try and be a basketball purist a little bit, honestly. Because to be quite honest with you, I got asked a couple podcasts ago, like, how I have fun or enjoy or try not to, not have it be like, oh, when I cover this team. But you just have to be able to enjoy the players on the other side of the court too. Like, just enjoy the basketballiness of it all.
Right.
And that's I had a blast watching this game because I was impressed that Scotty was able to get into the lane and score there. I enjoyed that. I always kind of enjoy watching Grady's process, and the Rockets were just like a bucket of fun, like totally
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Man, the Rockets are chef's kiss right now. Like, they are so fun to watch. I think maybe the only other team that maybe is fun to watch as them is probably OKC, but that's my opinion. Like,
we get that in 2 days.
Yeah, we get that. Yeah, on Sunday. So that's very cool. But yeah, the Rockets, I can't say enough of how good they're or how fun they are to watch, to be honest. And I'm sure they're going to be a force going forward. But tonight they were a force against us, which obviously we don't like.
Okay. Sean R asks, what's the best thing to look forward to at the Rivley event, and how would you rate your pool skills? Last time at the Rivley event, a lot of people, Will is a really big deal. People really like meeting Will. There's a lot of fans of Will. So a lot of people were like, oh, cool, William Lewis here. That was good. If you like the work of anybody there and you want to talk to them after not being able to meet them in person, maybe that's cool. But I think a lot of the conversations will be really fun and interesting. How are my pool skills? I played recently. It was the Atlanta game. I watched that game at Louis Zatzman's house with my friend Oleg. And after the game, after Louis and I did the podcast, we played pool. And I have now played Louis, I think, 30 times in pool. I have beaten him once. And I'm not good at pool, but Louis is incredibly good at pool.
Wow.
And my friend Oleg also beat me as well. So I'm not good at pool. People would wax me. I'll get waxed at pool, 100%. Are you good at pool?
No, honestly, I would like to think I'm somewhat competitive, but to be honest, I don't think I've won a game since I can remember, man. But you know what? Maybe we have to face off in pool, the two of us, because maybe if we face off, that'll elevate the other one.
Yeah. It's like Raptors versus Pistons. It's just watching the worst thing you've ever seen.
Exactly.
That's you and I as we play pool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Joseph Cassidy hits on something important. Hit the likes. That's true. While you're here, the concurrent viewers, hit the like button. It helps promote it in the algorithm to other people who watch this afterwards. It's totally free, and hopefully you're watching because you like us, and that's a small thing you can do. Is there anything you want to say before we get out of here, Manny?
No, I did want to just point out that if we do take our hats off, you and I, we are essentially the same person.
Hell yeah.
Just in inverse. That's it. It's like you're the golden Oreo and I'm the OG, right? So it's like I don't know. I'm just saying if Oreo could maybe sponsor us, that would be great.
Sure.
That'd be great. You know,
It's a decent consideration. The last comment from Sid is battle of the mid, which was about, you know, the Raptors and the Pistons, but it's now battle of the bald, or bald and the beautiful.
Bald and beautiful. I love
as
it.
Matt Hogg says.
I
Yeah,
love it. Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Solstice 99 says Lewis had home court advantage in regards to the pool. No,
The pool.
he would wax me anywhere, man. I really mean that. Last thing I'll say before we get out of here, thank you very much for hopping on with me, Manny. This was a total blast. For all the people who are going to be at the Rivley event, I can't wait to see you and chop it up. Aubrey Los Ojos says, make the trip to Istanbul and get the armpit haircut. OG3 says,
let's plan it. Let's plan it right now.
OG3 says we're one shade away from a bald Neapolitan, which, yeah, very good. I think, honestly, with this lighting, I look kind of like I'm almost a strawberry, to be quite honest.
You almost do, yeah. I was gonna say.
But yeah, that's about it. Looking forward to see everybody. Looking forward to more conversations. And I'll see y'all after the Oklahoma City game. And I will be joined by, I think, S and Trey in person, because I think we're all watching that game together. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned for S's recap tomorrow morning, which are always fantastic, always tremendous. That'll be fun. And just keep tuning in with these Raptors. Find something fun to watch with each game. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.